Now let's bring in 1010 XL's Frank Frangie. Frank, the Jaguars getting ready to kind of move into the OTA part of their offseason program, but the big talk around all of the Jacksonville fans is all the stuff around the stadium. There's a lot of layers to this thing. I guess the big one is the beans that Lenny Curry maybe spilled a couple of weeks ago, saying that the team may have to play outside of Jacksonville for a year or two during those renovations.
I can't imagine, Jamal, that they would do it any other way. It just doesn't make sense to me to not play this somewhere else. Every other team or many other teams have done it. The Panthers played at Clemson. Minnesota played at the College Stadium in Minneapolis. The Bears played at Illinois, which is 2.5 hours away in Champaign. That's the fastest way to do it. You could do it in 2 years, not 4 years. You could come back to this beautiful stadium, and I think Florida would like to see it. I wouldn't go to Orlando. I would go to Gainesville because I think Gainesville makes sense. It's closer. It's a grass field. They're used to it. They're used to having big-time media at those games. I think the way you have to do it, play 2 years in Gainesville. Before you know it, the team will be back in a beautiful stadium. So that's what I hope they do. And my gut tells me, I don't know for sure because I don't think anyone's decided. They haven't even talked about it yet. So nothing's been decided. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's where it lands.
I'm probably on the other side of the coin of this one from you. I think playing games outside of Jacksonville, bad look for this team. And that's just kind of my personal take on it. The Panthers played at Clemson when they opened the franchise, so they did that for a year. Right. A little bit of a different situation there. The other two you mentioned, the Bears did it, and they're already trying to undo the renovations that they did on Soldier Field and moving to a new stadium. So that one kind of a failed renovation project. The Vikings did it successfully, but playing outside, and even if it's in Gainesville or Orlando, it's just going to be a weird look, especially when the team is finally getting to that stage where fans want to be at these games and see the team.
Jamal, all fair points, and there's no question. But there's nowhere to play. Right. UNF has 10,000 seats. The baseball grounds, Bragan Field, has about 10,000 seats. It would cost $100 million. And here's the thing. In addition to the $100 million, it still wouldn't be a very good setup. You still wouldn't be able to get, I don't think you could get to 30 or 40,000 seats. When the Chargers did it, that soccer stadium already was built. You didn't have to do much to it. I don't think, if there was a place in town to play it, I would agree with you. There's no, in my opinion, there's nowhere you could go. You can't create a stadium that doesn't exist. I don't know any other way to do it. So I hear your point, but I don't think they can avoid it. I really don't.
No, you're right. There's nowhere in town. If you look at all of the stadiums that are around, that's the big problem for the Jaguars, is that there's no major college stadium here in town, because even when you talk about the Vikings renovation, they played at the University of Minnesota, which is also in Minneapolis. So it's not like they were taking the fans out to Gainesville the way the Jaguars are going to be asking people to do. I think this is a big ask. I don't think that it is ideal. I think that the city and the team has dropped the ball on this, letting it get to this point where they're going to have to go outside and say, all right, well, we're going to go somewhere else for a couple of years in Trevor's prime, and then you can come back to this whole new, nice, shiny stadium when it's done.
But, Jamal, I don't know what else they could have done. I mean, again, you can't create a stadium in town that doesn't exist. There's not another one here. So if you had to redo your stadium, and they do, I think everybody agrees, I don't know that there's any other options. I guess that's my point. I don't know whether they did it before or later. I'm not sure what other alternatives there could have been.
Well, you get ahead of the 8 ball. You look at a stadium like the Superdome. The Superdome has never had a renovation that took the Saints outside of Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. Outside of that, they've done small, major renovations each offseason to try and keep it up to date to where it needs to be. You look at a stadium like Kyle Field, where Texas A&M plays. They kept their historical moniker while also doing major renovations in periods of time to try and get it to be an updated stadium with the old shell, similar to what the Jaguars are doing. They've just kind of waited until their backs are up against the wall.
Yeah, I hear you, but I've been to Kyle Field and as you, the Superdome, many times, and I think what we're going to get is way better than both of them. I think what we're going to get is a mini version of SoFi Stadium, and I think it takes time. Now, look, I do think there's a model that you could take 4 years, not 2 years, like Miami did. See, Miami didn't have anywhere else to play. There was nowhere nearby. There's not. Remember, the University of Miami plays there too. So there's not an hour-and-a-half stadium, an hour-and-a-half away where they could play like there is for this team. So they took 3 or 4 years to do it. There was construction the whole time. I think that's on the table. Now, it's going to cost more, so if the city's willing to spend more, and if taxpayers are willing to spend more, then you can do it that way. But those are the only two options. And regardless of what's happened in the past, those are really the only two options now.
There's not a lot of options. I don't think it's an ideal situation either way. Right. But we're kind of in a position where they're going to have to pick a direction and kind of stick with it. So we'll see how everything shakes out. It should be an interesting ride, and hopefully it's one that Jaguars fans are excited to be on and are happy with once they're all finished. Thanks, Frank. We'll talk more about it as the Jaguars continue through their offseason program.